Diplomacy is a rather tricky game. You never know what's coming next. One moment, leaders of two countries are hugging it out, and the very next, they are up in arms. Take Joe Biden, for example. The American president was spotted fist-bumping with the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. This was less than 3 months ago. And now, he's promising to punish the kingdom. In an interview to an American broadcaster, Biden said there are going to be some consequences for what they've done with Russia. They here stands for Saudi Arabia. So what did they do with Russia? Most of you already know the backstory by now, but I'll quickly run you through the events. It all began on the 5th of October. The Organization of the Petrol Exporting Countries, along with Russia, announced that it would cut its oil production by 2 million barrels per day. And like most of you already know this, the grouping is called the OPEC+, and it is led by Saudi Arabia. So Riyadh is obviously defending the decision. It says the call was purely economic. The kingdom's oil minister said, and I quote, OPEC+ members acted responsibly and took the appropriate decision. The United States, however, is not convinced. It believes that the oil cartel's decision was quote-unquote against the interest of American people. Now, what has a number of oil barrels got to do with Americans? Simply put, rising consumer prices. It's basic economics. A fall in oil production will amount to a rise in oil prices, and that is the last thing America needs right now. 1. There is an impending recession, and this is something we will elaborate on in a bit. But mostly, Biden is upset about rising oil prices ahead of elections, crucial elections. The US midterm polls are due this November. And the US president knows that unhappy voters can be unforgiving. So that settles the anti-US bit. But why is Biden hinting at a collusion with Russia? You see, Western analysts like to highlight how the fall in oil production will lead to a rise in oil prices, which would invariably add to the revenue of oil-producing countries. Now, Russia is a major oil producer, and critics say that Russia is using oil money to fund the Ukraine war. And that is how the OPEC+ decision is being seen as anti-American and pro-Russian. Now, the immediate fallout was this. The White House said that it will be reviewing ties with Saudi Arabia. The spokesperson for the US National Security Council said, and I quote again, "We're not announcing a formal policy review here with a special team or anything like that, but what we're talking about is the president's belief that the relationship needs to be reviewed." And you already heard what Biden had to say. He did not elaborate what exactly he had in mind, but instead said, and I'm quoting again, "I'm not going to get into what I'd consider and what I have in mind, but there will be consequences." That's what made headlines. So quite a mixed signal here. There will be rethinking and reviews, but there will not be a formal policy announcement. There will be consequences, but at the same time, we don't know what the Biden administration is considering at the moment. What are these consequences? Let me explain. You see, America's ties with Saudi Arabia have not been the best under Joe Biden. Remember, he even campaigned on the promise of making Saudi Arabia a pariah state. He said his administration will make Riyadh pay for the assassination of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. But when Biden was elected president, he flew down to Riyadh to offer an olive branch to the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, MBS. He even did a little fist bump, an image we've seen repeatedly. And now, 3 months on, he wants to do a complete U-turn. The relationship between the two countries can best be defined as one for security. Let me explain. Saudi sells oil to the US and America sells arms. And that brings me to my next question. Can the US stop selling weapons to the Saudis? Freeze arms sales completely? Well, some Democrats are already demanding that. But will Biden oblige? One must realize that this is not a Trump White House that we are talking about. There is already a gap in amity between the two parties. For one, there is no open praise for the kingdom or any flaunting of arms deals. Some analysts say that recent developments could lead to a point of no return. Now, to give us some deeper insight into what one can expect in the coming days, I just caught up with Ahmed Al Ibrahim. He's an expert on Saudi-US relations. He joined me from Riyadh earlier this evening. I asked him about how can we expect Saudi Arabia to respond to Biden's remarks. And this is what he had to say.
In very short, we are used to this kind of language from the Obama era, and nothing happened. Obama was as much as he was against Saudi Arabia, he's the most American president that he actually visited Saudi Arabia. Two of them is actually to apologize, and we are used to it. This is an assessment that Biden he took initiative and he said it for the local consumption. As you know, and your viewers know, that we are approaching the midterm election, and the OPEC Plus reduction came in such a vital time, not to politicize any American or anything to do with America. It is basically pure for the interest of the OPEC Plus, but it did not resonate well with the internal politics of the United States, especially the Democratic Party and the extreme left. And we are used to it. I'm sure when he go back and he sits with his national security advisor and his cabinet and the people who really matters and really know what kind of relationship Saudi Arabia has and the United States, they will definitely shy away from this kind of statement.
You heard him. He clearly says that Saudi Arabia is used to this narrative since the Obama era. Now, here's the next big question, something that should interest our American viewers more. What does this turn of events mean for Biden? For starters, it is a diplomatic failure. All that jetting in and out of Riyadh, the fist bump, all of it clearly amounted to nothing. It is a foreign policy failure for the Biden White House. In fact, one of its many foreign policy failures. And it comes too close to the hasty exit from Afghanistan, or even for that matter, the escalation of tensions with Russia. Point number 2, rising oil prices could mean an electoral defeat for Joe Biden. It could amount to loss of Congress seats. So here's a question. Will a weaker Biden be a dangerous Biden? As he loses votes in the midterms, will Biden try to secure this re-election by waging a war? It's a loaded question. After all, no US president has lost a re-election during wartime. Let me cite some examples. James Madison was re-elected during the War of 1812. President Lincoln during the Civil War. Roosevelt during the Second World War. Richard Nixon during the Vietnam War. George W. Bush was re-elected during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. So if Biden loses the midterms, what will be his strategy to cling on to power? We asked this question to Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis. He is a defense expert, and I want you to listen to what he said.
There's so many things that could change between now and then. It's hard to say what he would do after if he loses. But I mean, the near-term issue is very clear that there's a lot of anger, especially in Congress, wanting to suspend all military cooperation, stop all military assistance, and basically completely change the nature of the relationship between Saudi Arabia and the United States, regardless of how the midterms come out. So I'm not sure that the midterms are quite as big of an issue, certainly not on the other side, because they're an issue right now, because any kind of rise in oil prices means a rise in gas prices, and that is always bad for the incumbents.
There's anger in Congress, he says, and that should sum up what you should be expecting in the coming days. It's a story that we will continue to track. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.